Hello everybody, welcome back to another video I'm making or have. Um, a few years ago, I think about 6 years ago, I posted a video um, on a 7,000 year prophecy, and I don't get a lot of views on that, which I find it interesting why, but it's also interesting that and it could be I'm getting views that's just not being recorded. Doesn't matter. Um, it's there for educational purposes, and so is this one. There are a lot of people are going around talking about a rapture and being taken out and uh, the world coming to an end. There's a lot of scriptures, things like it's appointed once for man to die and then judgment. A lot of those scriptures, if you take them bluntly, you don't have a clue what they mean. And so a lot of people say, well, hey, when I die and I'm born again or resurrected, when I'm resurrected, then um, it's on the judgment. That's not how the Bible is laid out. Um, and that 7,000 year prophecy video shows that. So what I'm going to do is in that video I didn't talk. There's no words in it. You just have to sit and watch as I show and put scriptures on screen. So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about it. But I say a lot of times to people that we have about 2,500 years left for this earth before all things come to an end. And sometimes I'll get a response. Most of the time I don't. People think I'm nuts. They just think I'm crazy. Uh, they've never heard of it. They don't know anything about it. And because they're so ingrained in their beliefs, they really think that, uh, that when you die and you're resurrected, that's it. You're done. And the world is done, and that's not it. Or there's something else I've learned, and that is people, um, not just on the Christian side, but there's people out there who claim to be this thing called a millennial. I've actually never heard of them before, so that's something new that's popping up. There's always a new branch of something or a new branch of belief always popping up. Um, they're kind of thinking that the millennium is now and has been for 2,000 years. 1,000 year reign of Christ doesn't say anything about 2,000 years, only says 1,000. So anyway, we're going to get into that, or I'm going to get into that, and you guys can make your own determination, but I think you're going to find out that there is a lot more time left before this world ends. And we have to go through the millennium, that's 1,000 years. We have to go through the time after that, which in the book of Ezekiel, God referred to it as the latter days, because the latter days are not now. They are not before the return of Jesus. The latter days are after the millennium and before the day of judgment, because you have the day of judgment, and that day in itself is going to be spread over 1,000 years. I mean, you think about it. If every single person that's ever lived is going to be judged, um, how long would it take to go through all those people and talk to them and let them know what's going on? And there's a reason I say that. That reason is because Jesus said, pray that your flight be not in winter or on the Sabbath. Well, winter time is the time after the millennium, and the Sabbath is the day of judgment. Um, so there is that time plus the millennium. So you have, say, if you have the millennium without the winter, and then the day of judgment, that's 2,000 years. Right there alone, that's 2,000 years left for the world. But the winter is a 500-year time frame. And the way that you get the the winter as a 500-year time frame, Matthew 24:32, now learn this parable from the fig tree. When its branches already become tender and puts forth its leaves, you know that summer is near. And what he's talking about on summer, he's talking about the millennium, because that is after all these events take place that he goes on to explain. He is he's going to return, and he's going to reign for 1,000 years. That's where you have the Battle of Armageddon and all these other things before the millennium. So he's saying the summer is near. Well, summer is the beginning of the millennium, and he means it's pretty close. So right now we're in the springtime of a season. With that, you have the winter that comes after the millennium, okay? Because Jesus is talking about your flight. Your flight is your time of salvation. That comes in the winter or Sabbath. So what we have is the millennium is summer and fall. And that's how you get 500 years each, is because you take 1,000 years divided by 2 and you get 500 years. It's pretty simple. So you have 1,500 years accounted for, summer, fall, and winter. And then you have the Day of Judgment, which is another 1,000. So now you have 2,500 years accounted for in the future, and that's just when Jesus comes back. If we go back this is 2022, and we'll add that time frame onto it. And go back to the time of Jesus, you had another 2,000 years roughly on it. So now you're up to 4,500 years. And then you go back to the time of Abraham, you'll add another roughly 1,800 years, not quite 1,800. And so the time keeps growing in the 7,000 year time frame. And then you have to go on beyond Abraham. Abraham and Noah were alive at the same time. The Bible doesn't tell us that, but if you go back and date everything, you find out that they were alive for 59 years at the same time. So Abraham came at the end of Noah's times. So what you got then is you got to add more time, and then you have the time of Noah, 950 years, that you can add back to that. Now, obviously, that goes beyond 7,000 years, but not by very many years. And if you understand what's going on here, and then it goes back another 1,056 years, something like that, back to Adam. And so what you have is you have Adam created on the 6th day. He ate from the tree on the 7th day, which is a day of rest. He ate from the tree, and he died on the Sabbath day, or the day of rest. And that was the first Sabbath day, and which leads me to explaining here in a minute on that. I'll expand on that in a minute. But Adam died on a day of rest. And you can go back, if you date all those years back, you'll end up that Adam was created around 600 years into the 6th day. That's when Adam was created. So he dies on a day of rest, and then Noah gets born. Noah was born about 640 years into the day of rest, and which means he had about 360 years to go before the day of rest was over, which also coincides with the time that God then approached Noah, and God became active again in what's going on here on earth. And so this 7,000 year time frame begins after the day of rest. And this is if from the time after the day of rest till the end of the day of judgment, there will be 7,000 years will take place. Now, Peter says that a day unto the Lord is like 1,000 years. Okay, that means that our time frames is like 1,000 years, but it's just one day to God. So 7 days, 7,000 years will transpire before the end of the world. Now, Jesus said that he is Lord even of the Sabbath, and also he said this as in addition to. So you have the day of rest, which was 1,000 years long, and you have this next Sabbath day will be the day of judgment. So that too will be 1,000 years long, and that's where I get the 1,000 years for the day of judgment, because that will be the next Sabbath. And if Jesus is Lord of the Sabbath, then that means he will take that day. And that's the day of judgment. Now, the millennium is why a lot of people say, well, that's 7,000 years from Adam. And a lot of people have said for years that the millennium, well, that's the day of judgment. And it's not. And it's not. And I get the confusion that it brings up because it seems to be a free period that's been granted to believers. But there's a reason why it's been granted to believers, and it's because by the time at the end of the day of judgment, every person who's ever lived is going to be saved. That's what the whole idea of that your flight be not in winter or on the Sabbath. He's talking about your time of salvation. And there are people who aren't going to get it this go around in this life because they have been led astray so far that you can't talk to them about nothing, or they believe in some religion that has absolutely zero to do with the Bible. And so because they have rejected all the teachings, they won't be given a chance until after the millennium. Then what happens during the winter after the millennium is the war of Gog and Magog that people believe is involves Russia, which I show in another video. That it's not true. It doesn't involve Russia. And God says that will come to pass in the latter days, which is after the millennium. It's also documented in the 20th chapter in Revelation as the war of Gog and Magog. That's what happens after the millennium. See, Satan is bound up during the millennium, and afterwards he's released, and along with every person that's ever lived to be resurrected, and that's in Revelation 25. So every person that's ever lived will be resurrected, and there's 500 years going on there. And so the prophecies of Ezekiel take place during that time frame, during that 500 years. It's a long, long time. And what it is people will be resurrected. They'll come up, visit their homelands, they'll visit friends, relatives, they'll see what's going on. Who knows? But they'll be offered a chance at that time for salvation and say, wow, boy, did I screw up. And they'll gain their salvation then. Not all of them will, but because there's going to be probably millions, if not billions of people will go up on Israel where Jesus is at and try to overtake it. And of course, that's when God sends the fire from heaven and devours them while they stand on their feet. And after that, then comes the day of judgment, in which is the last time for salvation. And of course, it's the last resurrection. One of my other videos, I show these different resurrections, and there are 7 of them in the Bible. And so what you have is on the day of judgment, they will have the last opportunity. It'll be the very last opportunity. And it'll be the second time that they've died. So you would think by then they'll have it figured out. And accordingly, if every knee shall bow, there won't be anybody left for the day of judgment. Can't see God, bringing everybody and every knee bowing, and then sending some of them off to darkness. But that just doesn't make sense. And I just can't see it happening. The whole purpose is that Jesus was sent out to bring salvation to all people. The angels said that, and that's exactly the intent. But God has determined that He's going to take 7,000 years in fulfilling all these prophecies that have been going on, and it's very slow. So when He says, "Behold, I come quickly," yeah, it's not that quick. Maybe to Him it's quick, because remember, that's just a day for Him. Um, so for Him it's quick, for us it's not. So that's the difference between His time frame and ours. But I wanted to say this. You can watch that other video. It might help you see something that I missed here. But the bottom line is that it's not the end of the world when Jesus returns. The battle of Gog and Magog takes place after the millennium. Another resurrection takes place for the day of judgment, because you can't have judgment if nobody's there. And so those people get resurrected. And I think I covered about all. I'm trying to keep this as short as I can. You guys have a good one. And thanks for watching. And please try to understand this stuff, okay? Because it is scriptural. And after all, if you're reading the Bible and trying to follow it, that's what you're trying to follow, is what's scriptural. Thank you guys for watching.